Hello everyone, welcome back to St. Louis Teens and welcome back to our series on Champions for Teens, which features lawmakers and leaders working with teens in their community. Today we're here with Mayor Bob Nation, who is the mayor of the city of Chesterfield in Missouri and has successfully navigated us through this pandemic and helped small businesses and the economy during this time. Mayor Nation, thank you so much for the service that you have done.
You're welcome, and thank you.
So can you take us back to the beginning here? How did you sort of get involved in political service, and what inspired you to go into political service, and how has your journey been like so far?
Well, okay, you use the word political. I guess everything is political to an extent, although I prefer to use the term public service versus political. But I guess I would go back to as a resident in the subdivision where I reside, in Chesterfield. I sought to become a trustee, and I guess that my main motivation for getting involved in that was I just simply wanted to see our homeowners' dues spent responsibly, and so I sought to become a trustee there, and I did that for a number of years, and then I guess when I first became a council member in Chesterfield back in 2007. I was asked to do it. I wasn't necessarily seeking to do it, but obviously that would have been a part of my motivation there also to assure that our tax dollars were spent, appropriately.
And I know it can be difficult, but if you had to pick one part of your job that would be your favorite today, what would it be?
I still, and this goes back to when I was a council member and even as mayor. I guess one of the most gratifying things is when I have an opportunity to help a resident or a business get an answer to their question, or that is related to one of the services that we as a city provide. There's a lot of things that are not necessarily straightforward, so it may take a while to get to the bottom. Find an ordinance that may be applicable to a problem that someone has. So I enjoy helping people get an answer or solve a problem that they may have.
And in terms of small businesses, with the COVID-19 pandemic and the onset of COVID-19, small businesses have been hit quite hardly. And in order for a city to manage the COVID-19 pandemic effectively, it requires great governing, not only on the part of the city, but it also requires the city to be working well and communicate well and effectively with all levels of government. And Mayor Nation, you have managed the COVID-19 pandemic very, very well. And we had to ask, how have you changed your governing process due to COVID-19, and what have been some of your keys to success during this time?
Well, first of all, it's not me. I'll give it credit predominantly to our full-time staff, our city administrator, and our key directors of each of the departments. They're the ones that come up with the recommendations, and we as an elected body, we approve what they recommend, unless we disagree, but I'm going to give them the credit as opposed to me. So obviously, the pandemic, the COVID has, first of all, it presented a tremendous economic challenge. Most cities, not just Chesterfield, but most municipalities have a heavy reliance on sales taxes. So with the economic impact, with all the stores being closed down, restaurants, etc., we are experiencing a significant reduction in revenues. So as a result, when this came about, we recognized that we're going to be dealing with less revenues. And one little thing that complicates it, we don't receive these revenues until 2 months after they're generated. So we kind of had to make projections as to what the future impact is going to be. But based upon the realities of these, the adjustments that the city has made, we furloughed, laid off a number of employees pretty much across the board. And now that we're a couple months into this, and we see that we get a more true picture as to what the impact is going to be. We've begun to bring some employees back. obviously with the social distancing requirements, there were some jobs, some work that could not be done. So obviously those were some of the people who, would have been furloughed and laid off. If some employees can do their jobs remotely, predominantly from home, then, that's a good thing. So those are some of the factors that help make the decision as to who might be, temporarily laid off. There was an assistance, federal government, through the CARES Act, some assistance in unemployment. So some employees, weren't, as affected by being laid off or furloughed as others because of the additional federal money. So that's pretty much behind us now, and we're looking forward to getting back to normal. We don't have a health department, so we are obliged to abide by the St. Louis County Health Department rules and regulations, and so that's what we've had to do. And as far as the businesses, we did make some modifications to some of our ordinances that would streamline getting permits for all additional seating or outdoor seating, modifications to businesses that would allow them to reopen as quickly as possible as the county loosened the restrictions. And
one sort of part of Chesterfield that COVID-19 has affected as well has been the schools, and they have been shut down, and this is in a very good attempt to slow the spread of this virus. I know that you have spent quite a bit of time and had numerous occasions where you've had interactions with students, whether it's teaching classes or talking to them at their school. If you could sort of pick back one of your most positive memories and interactions that you've had with teenagers, what would it be?
Well, I guess I've had a lot of opportunities. There's one in particular that comes to my mind, and it may not be along the lines of what you're thinking of, but I have had a number of opportunities to go out to the different high schools and different groups and talk to them about the levels of government and what we do as a city, not only in the city of Chesterfield, but most of the municipalities throughout St. Louis County. One particular thing I remember was there's people probably don't realize this, but there's a number of old cemeteries that exist, maybe adjacent to what are now subdivisions, and they've become abandoned, and nobody takes care of them, or the people that are supposed to take care of them don't do that, and over time you lose track of whose responsibility it is. There was one cemetery, one of these subdivisions, and this goes back a number of years ago. The cemetery headstones and everything had become overgrown. So a group of volunteer teens, high school students predominantly, I believe, under the supervision and coordination of our city parks department, were able to go in and clean up the weeds and the branches and the trees, and make this, return this cemetery to a more presentable condition. So that was a lot of hard work, and I thought, well, that was the real productivity there. So that's one thing. But I having had my wife and I'm not from here, but my wife and I, we've lived here for over 40 years. We've raised our 3 sons here, and so now we have grandkids. So I love youth. Obviously, youth are our future, and I want to do all I can to encourage them to pursue whatever interests them, in order that they can become productive members of society. So whatever we can do, whatever I can do to facilitate their learning what about the different levels of government and what municipalities do. Municipalities here in St. Louis County, we don't serve on a partisan basis. We don't run as a Republican or Democrat or independent or anything, and that's because the services that our municipalities provide are not related to partisan politics.
And you talk about the work that those teenagers did there, and I think it's incredible that teenagers are able to get involved like that. And in your opinion, how do you think that more lawmakers, leaders, and even members of Congress can interact more with teenagers in their community and youth in their community and build rich and meaningful interactions and partnerships with them?
That is a little bit of a difficult question for me to answer because first of all, I'm not a legislator, and it sounds like the levels that you're talking about are at either the state or federal level, and unfortunately I would think that at the higher levels there's more and more of a disconnect, because they're not necessarily local. I mean, Washington D.C. is a long way from Missouri, and Jefferson City is not in the backyard of where we reside. So I don't really I don't have any specific suggestions along those lines.
Looking forward into the future, looking forward into the post-pandemic world, our city, our state, our nation, how do you think that this post-pandemic life will be different, and how do you think that our nation will be affected due to COVID-19, particularly in terms of teens and youth, in terms of whether it be in terms of their education, their jobs, or the economy? How do you think that they will be affected, and how do you think that we can better prepare for that?
Well, I don't know, but if I had to guess, I mean, some of this is common sense, but obviously with the schools being shut down, we don't know what's going to happen. As far as reopening, I know my sons and their wives, and they're still awaiting the answers as far as whether the schools will be open for their children, my grandchildren. Obviously, the distance learning or online educational opportunities through technology, that role, I would think, is naturally going to be enhanced and made more use of. So that's kind of a given, and I think that's good. Even in my own career, as I look back many years ago, people may have questioned it when it was first coming about, but as I recall, it was an effective way, using the computers and technology of learning, as opposed to sitting in a classroom or taking notes or being there physically. I think it's important. I think the whole country, I'm kind of diverging here, but I think our whole country has been in a heightened state of anxiety, because of the COVID and because of the George Floyd thing and other things. It's people aren't accustomed to having to stay home and having their ability to travel and interact with each other. It's difficult. So I think, for myself, I think we just have to do the best we can, comply with the rules, and realize that this too shall pass, and in a year from now, or maybe less, things will be back to more of what we thought was normal before, I hope.
Mayor Nation, thank you so much for investing your time and resources into our teens and serving our city even through this pandemic very effectively, and spending your time to serve our city very effectively. And thank you so much for your time and answering all of our questions today.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.